Hey everybody, it's Saturday, May 1st, 2021. Thank you for joining me for this broadcast. You're watching Bull, Boom, Bear, Bust. Hope everyone is having a great weekend so far. And no matter what time you're watching this, I hope you're doing well. Now let's just recap some of the events and stories that we covered this past week. It was a pretty busy week. And we're going to talk about some more current news and more food shortage concerns. And a lot of the farms here in the United States are not doing so good, despite what you're being told in other areas and other sources. Most recent, we talked about how incomes have surged to an all-time record high in March. Actually, it was because of the stimulus and the extra payouts that are being sent out. So incomes are falling under the category, or rather the payouts, the stimulus payouts and the unemployment benefits are falling under the category of incomes. Right? So it makes it seem like there's an actual economic recovery when it's really not. It's really just money printers handing out money to the people. Right? So while that's being painted as a very great thing, the economy's doing great, people are doing better than ever, incomes are at all-time highs, it's actually just the opposite. It's worse because more people now are dependent on handouts and payouts. And that means when the payouts stop, there's going to be millions and millions of starving people. So it's not good. And we're going to talk about the food situation here in just a few minutes. But we also have ongoing price inflation. So even though most people are dependent on payouts and handouts just to feed themselves, we now have prices that are just mega bubblish and beyond. So we talked about a $575,000 shack basically that was falling off the edge of a hill in the Bay Area here in California. And home prices going up everywhere. We try to find more affordable homes in that video. There are some areas they're still reasonably priced, but even in places like Ohio, Indiana, and Iowa, you're still seeing home prices rise. Also, recent report, the purchasing power of your dollar has taken unprecedented declines, and the dollar's lost over 90% of its value since the unlimited money creation was allowed. Costs of rents are going up. We still have millions of people behind on their rent. The mortgage situation is not getting much better. It's still looking very bad with millions of people behind on their mortgages. We're going to talk about that in a later report because I want to go more in depth on that topic of mortgages and housing again. Also recently, we discovered that every household owes about $800,000 if what we're told is true, if the workers are on the hook for all this debt, which is impossible to pay back, but they're telling us that workers in the United States are going to have to pay off this debt. Well, if that's true, then it's going to be about $800,000 per working person. And in that video, we basically revealed the lie that most of you, I think, know by now. You know the truth, that it's impossible to pay off the debt no matter how much you raise people's taxes. It's just going to add to the problem. Right? Because the more you take out of people's paycheck, the more handouts are going to have to be given out. And that's more debt, which makes it even more impossible to pay. Do you see? So it's just like a snowball rolling down the hill, just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, eventually turns into an avalanche. And that's essentially what's happening here. It's going to be more debt on top of debt. And to make up for all the debt, they're going to have to take more of your paycheck because they're saying that you have to pay for the debt. That's basically money printed out of thin air. And that puts people in a more desperate situation. More people then choose just to not to work, to give up, to depend on payouts, or just to live in a tent. So then you have less people working. We see the labor force participation rate not really improving. And actually, as the years go by, it continues to worsen, which makes the problem even worse. So then people have to get more payouts and handouts. Right? So you see it's a never-ending debt wheel. Basically, it's like a hamster on one of those wheels at the pet store. Right? They're running really fast. They're working really hard, but they're not getting anywhere. They're still in the same cage. Right? And the hamster on the debt wheel is kind of a analogy of the U.S. worker, right? Most people never get out of debt. Most people actually pass away with some sort of debt and leave this earth with sometimes nothing to pass down, even though they've worked hard, in many cases, worked hard their entire life. Most cases, nothing to pass down to their kids. It's simply just debt that they had to pay off, or in most cases never paid off. Okay, so with unprecedented money printing and payouts to people, you now have more demand for goods and products. And that's the state of the United States. That's the condition of the United States. A lot of people spending money that they don't have. A lot of those same people not producing anything. Many of them not working. The ones that are working desk jobs or computer jobs. They're not really producing anything as far as goods. Now, there's a lot of service sector jobs. So people are talking to you on the phone and they're typing up a lot of stuff on computer screens, but not really producing anything that people need to survive. And that's when we talk about food. Now, from everything that I can see here, inflation is taking off, and if things continue the way they are, with this unlimited amount of money printing and unprecedented money printing, prices are going to have to rise to go along with it. Right? You also have the perfect storm, not just the money printing, but the lower production because of all the shutdowns, the sickness, a lot of small businesses wiped out, never going to return, a lot of farms being wiped out. We're going to talk about that. But here's the Bloomberg Agri-Spot Index. We see agricultural prices are rising unprecedented levels here. We look to the far right here of this chart, and it's a blistering commodities price surge, or what they're calling a commodities rally, as highlighted here in this Bloomberg article. The price of all the stuff that makes everything is surging. And if you go down to this article, we've got some nice charts here. We see the price of corn surging, copper, aluminum, lumber, as we've talked about here many times, surging. All right, and this is much, much worse than a deflationary crash or collapse in the economy. All right, dropping prices, falling prices, and deflation, that has another term. It's also called a correction. Prices correct to where they should be or should have been the entire time if it weren't for the bubble market blowers. But see, corrections are not being allowed to happen right now. And in fact, the bubbles are just getting blown bigger. And that's being pointed to as an economic recovery. But in order for people to recover their purchasing power and not be in so much debt and not have to get handouts from the money printers, prices need to correct. They need to allow deflation. Prices need to be allowed to fall. Right now, there's a lot of components here. There's also a mega drought that we're seeing, and food shortages, and farmers are having a very difficult time. Let's talk about that next. Recent article here, AZ Central Southwest braces for water cutbacks as drought deepens along the Colorado River. Another component to all this was the crippling trade war. It devastated so many farmers, and farmers had to get billions in payouts just to keep from imploding and from having to file bankruptcy. This article right here, subsidies carried large U.S. farms through the crippling trade war. And look at this right here from this article. Government subsidies made up more than a third of farmers' income last year. 1/3. According to Reuters, that's up 21% from 4 years ago. Right, so it's not just people that are dependent on payouts, it's farmers. And without the farmers, we have more food shortages. People will be more desperate, more food lines. And what if food gets so expensive that everybody's going to have to end up in a food line? I mean, how many people are going to be self-sufficient if this problem continues to worsen? Do you know many people that don't have to go to the grocery store for their food? I don't know too many people in that situation. Also, here's another headline that makes things look better than they really are. This is out of Forbes. Farm bankruptcies drop thanks to federal aid, but falling cash receipts and elevated debt portend trouble ahead. So bankruptcies dropped, but only from the prior year. Well, look at what else is happening. Farmers are having to what they call tap their land values, taking out loans against the value of their farm because land prices, property prices have been rising. Right? So farmers, many of them to avoid bankruptcy, are taking out debt, getting loans, equity loans against their property. That's not good. But as far as bankruptcies dropping, like this headline says, it's only from the previous year. Take a look here. The total number of family farm bankruptcy filings dipped last year to 523, below the 9-year high in 2019. That was the high, but still the second highest annual amount. So folks, here's the bottom line. Our food supply is in trouble. Prices are rising. Farmers need payouts. People need payouts to be able to buy most goods and products, or some sort of loan for most people. At this point, if you're out of debt, if you're not dependent on payouts, if you're not dependent on having to tap your home equity, if you're not dependent on any sort of assistance program, especially being out of debt, be very, very thankful, because you're in the minority. Most people are in big, big trouble. And I say that because things are just continuing to get worse. Hope everybody's well. Fasten your seatbelts. Stay well, stay safe, stay prepared. Count your blessings. Thanks everybody for being here for this broadcast. Talk to you very, very soon. Bye for now, everybody.